session is about the technical process. And we have a great panel of speakers for you who I will introduce quickly, and then they will go through their experience in the energy retrofit realm, which will lead into the panel discussion. So I'd like to introduce first our moderator, Sean Brady, who is Efficiency Capital's Director of Business Development. He has 30 years of experience developing strategies to overcome Ontario's complex energy challenges. Sean helps clients understand that sustainability and resource optimization can be a platform for profitability and competitiveness. Mwarigha is the Vice President of Housing and Homelessness, Homeless Services, Asset Sustainability and Development at Woodgreen Community Services. After completing a study of Sweden's municipal sustainability services and green infrastructure planning, he's on a mission to green all the social housing assets he oversees. Most recently, Mwarigha led the charge on Woodgreen's $3.5 million energy retrofit project, which he expects to generate utility savings of over $6 million. Wen Lee is the sustainability analyst at Purpose Buildings. For over 15 years, she has been focused on closing the gap between ideas and scalable action for sustainability initiatives. Wen has a passion for net zero buildings and is experienced in energy efficiency and carbon reduction for municipal, commercial, and healthcare facilities. Jacek Sochacki is a project manager of asset management, planning, and sustainability for the region of Durham. He leads asset management plans for regional facilities and ensures that they align with corporate greenhouse gas reduction targets, and is now working to green the region's corporate building standard. And Lana is the manager of Oak Street Housing Co-op, a 149-unit multifamily co-op in downtown Toronto. She is an experienced manager, formerly overseeing municipal and federal co-ops and not-for-profit housing. Oak Street has undergone extensive capital and energy efficiency retrofit projects over the past 5 years after receiving preservation funding from CMHC and incentives from Enbridge and Toronto Housing, as well as the Home Assistance Program. Welcome, panel.
Good morning, all. And I'm really excited about the conversation we're going to have this morning. I really hope that this is a good way to kind of wrap up the wealth of technical information that's already been passed along, but really kind of dive down a little bit into the nuggets of what has worked for organizations that have implemented energy efficiency projects. And hopefully you can gather and gain some diamonds of ideas from this panel that can really help you move your project forward a little bit. I'm not going to say much myself. I've been involved in the energy efficiency industry for quite a long time, both on the industrial side, on the government side in terms of program development and program implementation, and on the private sector side through Efficiency Capital and some other initiatives. But I'd really like to have the panel introduce themselves. So I think first up is Mwarigha, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Mwarigha, as introduced, VP of Housing and Homelessness Services at Woodgreen. And happy again to be part of this conversation that is becoming ever more important in the context of what's happening globally and the need to accelerate the agenda for greener and more efficient buildings. Sure, Sean, you're on mute.
Sorry, do you want to walk through your slides a little bit?
So you want me to just go through my slide at the same time? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I'm here to talk about some of the work that we're doing at Woodgreen. Sorry, I beg your pardon. So the reason that we got into this project was we found ourselves in a bit of a bind because we house the most vulnerable people in the hard to house in Toronto. And our housing stock, however, has, over time aged. We started building housing from the 1960s and incrementally throughout. So you can imagine how much wear and tear, life cycle problems that our buildings experience. And we're no different from other social housing around that whole need to do massive capital renewal. At the same time, we have also not really been an asset management focused organization like most social housing. Our focus is on, helping people live independently through the mental health, addiction, and all kinds of issues that our portfolio houses. So when you combine that with an escalating cost of utilities, water 8% plus, electricity 16% plus, gas 8% plus, and as you know, this changes every 3 months. We could probably redo these numbers, and the escalation is higher. And then you put into that the necessity for us to, as Woodgreen, we like to be a sector leader in what we do. So making sure that the retention of affordable housing is an important part of general policy that addresses the need for more affordable housing. When you combine those three things, the SHRI project that we undertook with our partners, Efficiency Capital and Fin Projects, was an extremely powerful tool for us to address those three components together. Moving to the next slide. And so the result of the investment, Matt spoke earlier in a little bit more detail about the financial piece. It was a net injection of $3.1 million to our portfolio, a large section of our portfolio. Just absolutely amazing. The speed at which it was also done, I think, is also something that I need to mention. And now we've been enjoying about a year of those energy savings and using the savings in order to start paying for the equipment that was put in our buildings. And Matt again spoke a little bit more about that. The impact, of course, is not just in creating new efficiency, but it's also the community impact of, air quality, health outcomes, greater thermal comfort, reduced operational downtime and essential services, just a whole bunch of additional early warning signs that come and create allow us to do preventative maintenance much more at a much more inexpensive stage of whatever problem. So there's a whole multiplication of things that we've derived as benefit. Not to mention that at a financial level, the deal has felt even sweeter because with the declining returns of our reserves, we feel a lot better that we put the money in the asset as opposed to have it sit there and let it be basically reduced in value by the market. Next slide, please. I think that was my part.
Yep.
And
that's you, Mwarigha.
Yeah.
So
thanks.
we've got Wen Lee up next. Wen, if you could just sort of talk a little bit about sort of your background and whatnot.
Yeah, thanks for the intro, Sean. My name is Wen. I'm a mechanical and civil engineer, and I have been working with various private and public sector clients in the last 10 years to look at different building types and developing their energy efficiency projects. And increasingly, I'm seeing in the last few years, there's a massive market transformation looking at carbon reduction. So I want to share some insights and tips from my past experiences relating to project success and what the clients have been looking at. Next slide, please.
That's great. Thanks, Wen.
And just as a preview, I want to share 4 top tips that I've learned through the career working with various different clients. Number 1 is there's a massive shift in policy and incentives around carbon reduction. We're seeing billions of dollars of funding coming out and anticipating more becoming available to enable that market transformation. So, and I want to just let you know that when the government is handing out money, you want to be in the know, so be informed with policy and funding available, which leads to the second point is when there's money coming out, you want to be the first in line, not the last. I've worked with a lot of funding timelines, and sometimes they are really tight. My past experience, I've worked with projects where you have 3 weeks to put in the application for the funding, and when you get approval, you have 4 months from beginning to tender and build, commission, and wrap up the project to finish. And on a 4 month timeline, you have to already have your client developed, your business case built and ready to go in order to get that funding. So the projects I'm working with the client now, we're looking at longer than the 10-year timeline horizon to plan out projects and get them to the tender ready stage. The third point is when we're looking at the projects now, we cannot do it piecemeal. We're not doing it equipment by equipment and system by system. We have to take a holistic look at the whole building, because in the next 30 years, when we're looking at climate change and carbon reduction, most of your HVAC and major building systems will come up to a renewal cycle. And if you're replacing like for like, you're going to have massive financial impact, but also miss that once in a lifetime replacement opportunity to upgrade your building to the efficient and low carbon equipment. And the last one, I think a few of our panelists and also previous presenters have touched upon, is we have to move away from the simple payback calculation when we're looking at retrofit projects now, because we're seeing a significant escalation in the carbon tax, which translates to the natural gas cost. We cannot use today's utility cost to project the financial picture for the projects we're looking at in the next 20 and 30 years. So using life cycle costing actually presents a very attractive financial picture to reduce your carbon consumption in the building.
Jacek, looking to have you talk through your slides, please.
Oh yeah, hi. So I'm Jacek Sochacki. I'm the project manager for asset management, planning and sustainability within Durham region. I'm also responsible for capital projects within Durham Local Housing Corporation. So that's our Durham Local Housing Corporation owns about 23 sites, exactly 23 sites, and various buildings from townhouses to walk-ups to 10-story buildings like the one you guys see in the picture right now. They're built roughly in 60, 70, so older portfolios coming up to renewal and heavy capital investment right now to bring it up to the phase. I think the reason I'm here is our Durham region adopted a climate emergency policy. So we have a target of 2045 to become GHG emission free from the operational side. And the project you guys see on this is one of the projects that we actually are doing. So we're doing full recladding of that 10-story tower, and we're doing changing all the windows and doors. And kind of coming back on what Ann said, we are actually using two government projects that actually allow us to get some grants. So we're using SHAPE and gas tax on this. And yeah, we had to be super ready for this. So that's where asset planning comes in and planning for the future. So we're ready to jump on when they come in and be ready. Okay.
That's great. Thanks, Jacek. And Lana, looking to hear a little bit from you about your background and the Oak Street Co-op.
I don't have slides, so I'm sorry. So I have managed 5 other properties before I came to Oak Street. One of them was a non-for-profit, and 4 of them were other municipal or federal housing co-ops. So the special thing about Oak Street is that we're located in the heart of Regent Park downtown, and we do have about a third of our members are seniors. We also have 17 units that are accessible. So we have quite a few members that are using mobility devices. And our members pay their own hydro and heating bills, which makes a big difference. I can say that because I managed previous co-ops where everything is included in the housing charge, and it makes a big difference in how members use their energy and also how receptive they are to certain capital projects. So when I arrived about 3.5 years ago at Oak Street, the manager who was here before worked at Oak Street for 34 years. And also the maintenance manager, they kind of retired at the same time. The co-op acquired refinancing in 2016, and prior to that, they were not able to afford basically any capital projects. They also had a lot of vacancy loss in the past due to the location of the co-op. We have solved that problem. We have like a 8-year waiting list, so we don't have that problem anymore. But the outcome was basically that when I arrived, they were just rolling out the first wave of capital projects using that refinancing. So a lot of the projects that we have done in the last couple of years was not because we wanted to save energy, but in the first place, it was because the equipment had reached the end of life. And some of the pieces have not reached end of life, but they failed, or they had to be repaired all the time, and it wasn't economical to maintain them. So that was the reason why, for example, we had a big project that went 2 years in the middle of the pandemic where we replaced 50% of the stucco on a high rise. We have a high rise and also townhouses and a commercial property. So we have a variety of scenarios. We also replaced all the windows and parts of the roofing. And we received an incentive from Toronto Hydro for that due to the energy savings. So that was part of the plan all along. But then we also had our MUA fail a few months after I started, and our boiler started to need repairs so often that it didn't make sense to maintain them. And we had an incident where we didn't have hot water, and that kind of really changed our outlook on things. So we replaced all those components. We replaced the MUA. We replaced the booster pump along with it because it made sense. We replaced the boilers with tankless boilers, and we received incentives from Enbridge for all of those equipment. We also changed our light poles to LED. We replaced a lot of appliances, and we introduced preventative maintenance plan, because part of the reason why those pieces of equipment failed was because there was no organized preventative maintenance in place. It was partially staff responsibility, and they didn't have the capacity, and we also didn't have a contractor who would actually explain to us why things went wrong. So we do now have a contractor that does quarterly HVAC maintenance, and since then we haven't experienced any issues. So apart from the fact that we have saved costs, because when we replaced the boilers with tankless, we didn't have to reline the tank. We didn't have to think, what are we going to do when that tank has to be replaced, and it is at the end of life. The comfort of the members was very important, because the day that we didn't have hot water, I could not sleep. So this is basically happiness of the members is also happiness of the staff, because you want to prevent emergencies as much as it's possible, because it disrupts everything. It's much more expensive to take care of things that you can't plan in advance. There were other. Did you say something?
Oh, sorry. I was just going to comment that I mean, there's a really great list of ideas and thoughts. I'm wondering if we could get into a bit of a conversation around that, and maybe Lana, if you could crystallize maybe a single value proposition, or why, like why overall, why was energy efficiency important to the organization, and how did you what was that why that really convinced people to get on board? And maybe after that, Jacek, I'd love to hear from you from Durham as well. So if you could crystallize like a single why that somebody else might be able to pick up and use in their moving their project forward.
Well, I don't think there is a single why. There are a couple whys. I think it's one of the reasons why our community has been very receptive. And I'm not saying everybody, because there are always people that are not receptive to any changes, as Marsha pointed out. So one of them is because generally our membership cares a lot about the environment. Like there's also a movement on reducing waste. We had a whole program running and we reduced our waste and increased our recycling rate. People are mostly, they don't have a car. Most people are cycling or walking. You know, it's this whole, it's a different mentality. If I compare it to my last co-ops, it's a very different mentality. We also have on our board like professionals that bring a lot of knowledge from their working places, and they want to see us improve, not only replace components with the same, but actually improve and look in the future. Then we'll also have the luxury that we have those refinancing funds, right? So
Sure,
you also need to have the money in place if you want to do this. And also the fact that people are paying for their own hydro and heating, and makes a difference as well. For example, we participated with Save on Energy in the home assistance program, where we had technicians come in and replace 440 thermostats for free. So now we have digital thermostats. So that makes it possible for our members to either program or set a certain temperature, and therefore reducing their heating bills, right? So
yeah, that's great. Jacek, did you have something comparable or other thoughts about, you know, why is it important to the Durham region organization?
I guess on my end, it was a little bit easier just because our council did adopt that climate emergency policy. So we have a clear target that we have to go towards to. However, that emergency came in after years of understanding that, you know, we need to take care of our climates, and government needs to be a leader in this, because before we you know, there's no financial benefit almost to do some of these, and which is changing right now, which we see right now that with carbon tax coming in and fuel prices being the way they are, it just makes sense to kind of future-proof the buildings and looking at this. So for us, it's a little bit easier because we have a target to go towards to. However, as we
if I might though, sorry, that I mean, having a top-down drive is really valuable, but there's also an engagement piece with the board in the middle piece, right? So what was it that sold the board on moving forward as this approach that will actually meet the need and the drive from above?
Exactly. So when we look at our portfolio, like I kind of mentioned in my intro, our portfolio is roughly built in 60s and 70s. So it's coming up on major repairs. And the way we've been looking at it, we've been kind of chipping at it one project at a time. And you know, the understanding is that it's not really a proper way of doing this, and it actually creates more problems. So we started doing this holistic approach, and we are looking at, you know, life cycle costing as our, you know, as a big kind of benefit to every project. And the holistic approach is really when you look at the building as a one, and you want to see where you want to take it. So we're doing energy modeling of the current and future. What do we need to get to that goal? And it helps us to get there, and also actually helps us reduce the costs, because when you add different measures into one project or one holistic approach, it actually makes sense as opposed to doing one-offs. If you just look at the cladding, there's no payback in this, right? Or the payback is very long and it's almost like non-existent. However, now if we do increase our insulation as we do the cladding, now we can reduce the size of the mechanical systems that we have in. And this is actually, it reduces our cost, not just from the project perspective, but also from operation side for years in the future. And a lot of times what we also looked at when we look at the life cycle costing, that some of the equipment that we will be replacing twice, we're paying a little bit more upfront for a better piece of equipment that's greener and it's going to last us twice as long. So that's where the life cycle costing really comes in, and it actually makes a lot of sense for the financial people to understand why is it done this way. We do have asset management program on our side when we go in, and we're very active on this. We do maintenance on that end, but our asset management, it's always when we come in, when we ask consultants to provide us with the replacements, it's always provided with the next greatest. No, we never replace like for like. We need to go forward. And right now, what we're doing a holistic approach for the whole portfolio to do a fuel switching to go to a full net zero, right? It doesn't mean that we're going to do it right now in this moment, but we need to know what it's going to take us to there. And even if it's doable in some of the buildings, right? Because some of the buildings that we have from the 1960s, maybe it's not doable, or it's not, not in the cards because the shape is the way it is, and we may need to rebuild them, but we need to understand that. So having that plan is very important.
That's great. Thanks, Jacek. So taking what you and Lana have said, there's a whole host of benefits that can feed into a business case that makes sense. And I do want to have a quick grab at, particularly with Lana, from what you've seen in implementing projects in Mwarigha, because you've gone through the ringer on this. Packaging those benefits, what were some of the key benefits that really won over organizations? And I'm wondering if it's beyond just the simple financial payback for the investments, reduced utility costs and those sorts of savings. Were there other benefits that were really important in engaging the decision makers to move a project forward?
Yeah, so for us, yes. For us, it was very important to, like when we do these, there is a financial side, there's a building side of it, you want to prolongate the life, but also you want to look at the tenants. You look at making their comfort better, right? If we're going to go now to better windows, now they can stand by that window and not be cold in winter. Right now, those buildings being built in 1970s, none of them have cooling, or if you have cooling, it's only in a central area. It's not really in that apartment. So that's what we're doing as our next steps to making the building viable. So we're going to be able to house people in the next 20 years, because when we look at this, and maybe that those, if we don't do it, they become unlivable. So the comfort for people and actually aesthetics of the site, right? If we make things better, people feel better in this. So their mental state of mind is actually better. That's a huge aspect. One thing that I want to touch on too, that I kind of missed on the initial one, is that having that plan in place actually prepped us, being able to jump on those grants that are coming in, those green grants, right? Without that, it takes forever to sometimes to go in and try to get the consultant on board and try to rush them through and get that going. So on some of the projects we actually are in, we're getting very large investments from those green grants to make them happen for us.
Sure. I'm sorry, I'm just really cognizant of time. We're running, we're right at noon, so I'm just trying to get everybody's thoughts. And when is that reflective of your experience as you're putting projects together?
Yeah, I totally agree with Jacek's point. When you are looking at a portfolio of buildings, it's really important for you to make decisions on when are we going to tackle what kind of project and what kind of buildings, and having the plans ready so you can harvest the funding that's available to actually really accelerate your business case. The other point I want to touch on the holistic planning of the building is when we're looking at when Jacek, you mentioned putting in air conditioners in the building, that actually really impacts the electrical demand capacity of the building, which also then builds a case for you to accelerate energy efficiency measures in order to reduce that demand, so your building can actually handle the load in terms of electrical capacity. Otherwise, you have to go through a really massive upgrade in the electrical system, which is very costly. And it also touches on the point of the envelope, because we're looking at installing cooling into the building, and a lot of your tenants are probably already putting in window air conditioners. Those window shakers probably will forfeit your insurance policies, and that's a really critical consideration to provide both the tenant comfort to your tenant, but also making sure that your building is covered in terms of safety. So putting in the insulation, upgrading the building envelope also touches on that point. So you can install a smaller mechanical system, both in terms of heating and cooling, and improving both the comfort of the building, the capacity of the building, and also the health and safety of the building.
Cool, thanks. Mwarigha, do you have any other thoughts about sort of key benefits that were critical in engaging the executive and moving your projects forward? Oh, still on mute. Mwarigha, you're still on mute. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, so we've talked about the tenant impact and, very similar to Jacek about what that is and what Wen was trying to say. The only other thing that I want to point out is in our process, Matt earlier in the earlier panel showed how we were able to demonstrate to the board the long-term impact on the financial bottom line in a sort of chartered way. People want to see that. But in our scenario as well, we engaged the board in the process. So we put together a small committee that went through the business case development process. And that way we were able to do almost the risk and mitigation calculation together. When the business case came to the board, it had people, and we had people with expertise. So, and they were excited because this was a new thing and it was innovative. And we tapped into people on the board who were like that. And they helped us walk it through the board and through the risk aspect. The last one I want to mention is the finance capacity and being able to work with them so that they can clue into how you integrate this green, I call it green accounting approach to your generic, financial bottom line perspective that doesn't know how to translate the monetization of energy savings into a real number for your financial statements.
I think we've had at least one question, but I wanted to ask each of you one other thing before we dive into that question, and that is, who specifically on the board did you feel was board or the executive committee or whoever was deciding on the project? Who was that key champion you needed to develop and tap into that helped make sure that the project moved forward? And I'm thinking, if I was trying to get a project forward, I'd want to find who are my friends and who are the champions that are going to help me on the decision-making side. So who did you guys find that was really critical in terms of moving a project forward? Lana, do you want to start? If you can give me an organizational kind of perspective on that.
Being a co-op, the big capital projects are being decided by the membership. So it's the board that does the first approval, but they always go to the membership. So you basically, what we did is we did sometimes have consultants or our engineer come to a membership meeting and explain in as plain as possible language what the implications will be, the restrictions, but also the advantages. So in certain scenarios like the boilers or the MUA where we had to act fast, it was basically the board that made the decision because we couldn't risk any service disruptions. And that's when I was very lucky to have those professionals on the board that basically said, yeah, this makes sense. We have that in our organization as well. Because if you don't have that, you can explain and it's not going to go anywhere. Great.
That's good. Thanks. When you're doing from the outside, who do you see that needs to be engaged working as a consultant with building owners and operators?
Yeah, because I produced the plans to have the projects moving forward, the most important people I engage with are the upper management, the asset management, and the finance department. And they all need to work together to make sure they have ownership of delivering the outcome together. The other piece I think is often missing in the picture is actually the operations team. So they have a lot of insight on how the building's running, what the bottlenecks are, and when new projects or especially new technologies are installed, without their buy-in, understanding, and having the capability to operate the equipment the way they're intended or designed, it often would lead to unintended consequences and outcomes. So having the people that are operating the building day to day at the table in the very beginning design stage is also really critical.
Cool, that's great. Mwarigha, any thoughts on that?
Just very quickly, the vision and embracing what we are trying to do here in terms of energy efficiency, that's a lot of people get there quicker than most people think. The critical bridge to get to the vision has to be crossed with, like I said, with the finance department, as well as, and we took both the financial mind in the finance department, the CFO, and somebody on the board with that. And then the second part of that bridge is people who understand contracts and have a legal lawyers, because these are very sophisticated contracts. They're not anywhere near what we normally do for other asset management pieces. And I'm really emphasizing those two aspects, because if you don't get those two people on board to help you make your business case solid, everything else about the business case is very easy for people to get to.
Okay, that's great. Jacek, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, just to quickly, I think it's a team effort. We do have a very good internal team. To Ian McVeigh, that actually was, I think did some pre-word initial remarks for this conference. He's one of the people that are very important for us. So we do have an internal team that includes everybody. So we include maintenance, we include finance, purchasing, everybody's on board. And then we have to prepare proper business cases, because at the end of the day, it's our regional council that makes the decision if the project is a go or no go. So it's really, you need to know what you're presenting to them, and you need to present it in a proper fashion that they can understand it and they can see the benefits.
Yeah.
As long as you do that, I think everybody can see that it's in benefit to you and benefit to the whole corporation and whole region. That there's no way for them not to accept it.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. So a question that came in was, how were tenants managed? Was there a need to relocate them on a temporary basis? Wonder, Jacek, you got the mic now. So was there how were your tenants managed during the process here?
So this is kind of very interesting. So this one of the projects we're doing some window and door replacements right now, and we had the COVID shutdown to it. We started just before the COVID, so then we had a number of months that we were shut down. So what we're doing actually, we're working with the contractors to mitigate that time that we get them out of the units, and we provide them with additional units they can go into. So we're able to split the work into smaller chunks, and we are keeping the building alive. I've seen a lot of great work being done in some other properties with other municipalities, but they kind of vacate the whole building, make it a lot easier. Unfortunately, we are not able to do this. So we're working on a live building essentially, and we're doing it piece by piece. So we got a number of units that we go daily. The tenants are notified. There's a whole process. We go in, we move the furniture for them. We're trying to make it better and easier on our end and on their end, so they're happy. And at the end of the day, they come back and they have brand new windows and brand new doors that makes them better. So I think everybody understands the message that they're part of the team, and so they are. And I think the buy-in is very important. So for us, having a clear message before the project started, explaining to them what we're going to be doing, why we're doing this, answering all the questions, it was a huge. That whole media management or project management part was very big on this. And then you're dealing with tenants that have been living there for 5-10 years sometimes. So it's their home. Essentially, you're entering a home. So I always tell my guys, when you do this, just feel like if somebody was coming to your home, how do you want that to feel, right? Then explain to this and be very supportive to them.
Mwarigha, from memory, it's fairly similar to what your process was when you were implementing. Is that right?
Yeah. Pretty similar. A very proactive tenant engagement process is extremely important.
Yeah.
As well as an open-ended Q&A after, because the equipment does behave different from what they're used to, and so the
re-education process is needed.
So there's a re-education process, because they can't crank up the heat to the same amount. You can't recreate Florida in the room like sometimes they were able to in the old system. So yeah.
Lana, did you have is that your experience for implementation as well?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we did not relocate anybody anywhere because we had no vacant units to relocate, and they all had to move their own furniture, even our seniors, which was quite a lot of communication. Yes, we had the same experience with, like, for example, the boilers that were installed. People would call and say, my shower doesn't get as hot as it used to be. But then we have all those seniors, they are very, very sensitive to heat. So we changed it only by 1 or 2 degrees. And then since then, everybody's happy. But it's basically any type of change people react to. So, and I actually negotiated some gift cards with our construction company, because they said they would work on the unit and then people were moving and then they ended up not. So I negotiated gift cards for the members that had to do double work.
Lovely. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to thank everybody very much for your time. I think this has been a good conversation. I really appreciate you making the time and sharing your insights and those sort of diamonds or nuggets of information that can help somebody move their project forward. It's great to hear your experience and see the successes moving forward. So Beata, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. That was a great conversation. I won't keep you with any additional comments. We will regroup tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp, and we look forward to seeing you then. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.